Good evening. I'm Michael Lane, filling in for Tom Olson at the Unknown Quantity. Tom is traveling this week out to Australia. We'll be talking about the IAC briefly, International Astronautical Conference. So tonight it's Sean and I and our wonderful guest, Tom Marotta. So he'll be joining us here in a little bit. So we'll start off the way we normally do with the news, talking about how satellite constellations might replace cell towers, which is pretty interesting to me. Going to the International Space Station and who's going to replace the ISS. Going back to the moon. Finally figured out that we're going back to the moon with Blue Origin. Locally here in Seattle, Hubble Networks raises $70 million. So kind of excited with our local ecosystem growing. And finally, a little bit controversial. NASA has been named as one of the spy agencies, national intelligence agencies. So that's a pretty big change. So, from the news desk at the Center for Space Commerce and Finance, let's get this party started. So, what is the Center for Space Commerce and Finance? We champion and strengthen emerging space startups and space-adjacent enterprises worldwide through advocacy, access, and advisory. Our pitch events and world-class boot camps fortify startups to be investor-ready. A lot of our work, including this show, is sponsored by our listeners, fans just like you. Do you like the way I'm trying to mimic our friend Tom with his inflections? If you click this plain as day donate button, a little in the tip jar, makes a big difference every month. Thank you very much. All right, and with that, I'm going to bring on, surprise, surprise, our co-host today is none other than our usually man behind the scenes producer, Sean Key. Come on in, Sean.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, we hardly ever see you, man. It's nice to have you on this side of the screen. I appreciate it.
I feel like the all and powerful great Oz coming up behind the curtain.
Right on. Tell the guests a little bit about you. Most people don't know who you are, so give a little bit about your background.
Well, as you can tell, I have a Southern accent. I am born from Florida. I'm a native Floridian, but I grew up in the country part of Florida. Obvious. I spent some time in the military, almost 8 years. I was in Berlin when the wall came down, which really dates me. I went in when I was 17, got out at 24. I was in a long-range surveillance unit, which at the end of my career, deployed to Bosnia. Their history goes back to the Ranger Lurk units back in Vietnam. And I left the military, tinkered around a little bit. I was working ag air, fertilizing pine forests with helicopters. Fun fact, my crew was the only one flying all day during 9/11 in the country. I just kept on hearing my pilot going, "Why doesn't the F-16s keep on flying by me?" I'm like, "Shut up, we got work to do. Let's go." So after 9/11, I kind of got the bug. I wanted to go back to school. I went to school. I was debating whether I was going to pursue music because I was also doing that at the same time. I was working Ag Air. My boss was a country music Hall of Famer. But at that time, two things were happening: Napster and the music industry was transforming, and then the X Prize. And working in aviation a good chunk of my life, I used to jump out of planes, rappel out of helicopters, and all that good stuff. When I was in the Army and plus working Ag Air, I didn't see that big of a leap going from aviation over into aerospace. And I happened to reach out to this little company at the time. It was called High Lift Systems. I think you heard of it.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I went back to it a little while later. It was called Liftport when I went to Liftport. And I reached out, and this guy named Michael Lane had invited me out to do an internship. And I did it. I came out for a week, did an internship. Then he asked me if I wanted to be a business development. And I said, certainly do. And we started our partnership or our relationship then when he was my boss. That was in 2006. And then, of course, we know what happened in 2007 and 8. Right. We tried to launch a online, like Huffington Post type of magazine for technology, cutting edge technology, and just couldn't really get traction. And plus, Michael had things he wanted to get done with the lunar elevator. And we lost touch for a little while. I went to work in a bank for a little while, went back to school, got my master's degree, and my MBA with a concentration in finance. And the whole time focusing on space because I was reading everything I get my hands on. JP Morgan Chase had published a document about space several years ago, and read that up on that, did a report on that. And then whenever, unfortunately, I got laid off from the bank, I'm like, I'm not chasing a job. I want to chase something I am passionate about. Reached out to Michael, and Michael said, yeah, come on, we got projects you can work on. So that's how I got here. And I've been writing ever since. And most people have seen it.
It's cool. I like having you around. It's and Dr. Plot is like, hey, are you the wizard behind the curtain? Absolutely. He's the wizard behind it.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't have a Charlie horse this time. Oh, that was so painful.
Yeah, that was last week. For those just tuning in, he went down for the count. He was in agony.
Trying to hit
Let's dig into the news here a little bit. What do you got to say about constellations? So last week, the deal of the week, maybe the deal of the year, was depending on how you count it, either $17 or $19 billion for SpaceX buying a bunch of assets. And now the very next week, we're starting to talk about. I'm going to quote this. For much of the history of modern communications, networks have been built from the ground up, literally. Fiber buried deep underground, towers rising skyward, microwave links bridging canyons. Our entire expectation of coverage has been centered about what we can build and maintain on land. But no matter how tall the tower or fast the fiber, the physical landscape enforces limitations. So I thought that was a pretty interesting intro. It's a cool article. What do you think about direct to cell or orbit first infrastructure, Sean?
I think we're going to see a lot more of it. I actually wrote a piece about the data centers, which is really kind of centered close to this.
Mm-hmm.
But the direct communications, that will be effective in quite a few markets, but I still see markets because we've had Walt Anderson on a while back, and he talked about the limitations about that, and I think that's still real.
Yeah,
because it is still appropriate technology for the area, and it goes back to one of the things that I talk about is that when you look at technology, you also got to look at the environment it's going to be implemented in. And that's the risk. If you try to take a high-tech technology into a very harsh environment or environment where you can't service it properly, or it's going to cost too much, then that technology runs a risk. So it depends. It's not only about the technology development and what it can do, but it's how it's deployed. So those were always key things I always looked at. And I think Walt Anderson nailed it on the head, but I still see a market for these guys.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. Cell power anywhere, cell reception anywhere. I was out. My mom lives out in the wilderness beside Seattle, and I was out there yesterday, and for about 4 hours during the day, there was no coverage, no signals, no jumping to another platform, just nothing, just me in the sky. And while it was kind of nice to be disconnected, maybe that's not how you want to live your life. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. I'm curious to see where this is going to go. I want to remind folks that this has been tried several times before. Teledesic is the reason why Bill Gates doesn't make space investments, because in, I don't know, 2003 or 4, something like that, he put, I don't know, so no one knows the real numbers, but it's about $400 million. He was a part of a $400 million raise. We don't know how much for Teledesic, and he got burned pretty bad. That certainly was premature. Certainly doesn't feel like it's premature now. Yeah, so it's going to be an interesting future. Our friend Charles Miller, terrific guy, built a company called Lynx Global to do direct to cell. He definitely pioneered a bunch of stuff. He has some of the core early days patents on the technology. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out over the next couple years. I don't think it's going to take very long. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. All right. Moving on. Who will replace the International Space Station after 2030? So, first of all, is station going to get deorbited by 2030? What's your bet on that?
I think it will be.
Yeah.
Let me find the news.
Sure. I think it's going to be. I definitely think it's going to be deorbited by 2030. There's a very minor but vocal voice that says we shouldn't deorbit it at all. We should keep it as some sort of monument or museum piece. I definitely support that, although I think the odds against that are pretty strong. When you've got both the most powerful man in the world.
We lost you, Michael. Well, folks, I am so sorry about that, but we have lost Michael for a moment. Just bear with us. Well, I am going to, let's see here if we can get him to come back on. There he is.
I did nothing on this end. I don't know what that was about.
It just didn't
Did you hear anything about my rant about ISS?
Nope. We all missed it.
All right. Well, it was brilliant. It was brilliant. I should. Very funny. Hey, and by the way, Brian, nice to see you. Yes, Teledesic was primarily the McCaw family. They had the earliest days of the internet. I forget which cell company ultimately bought the McCaw network, but the McCaw family is a little bit around here. Part of them are around this area. That's how they were running with the Gates family. But yeah, so there's a pioneer in McCaw that was seeing the future and thought that direct to device was maybe the way to go. But yeah, that technology was way early. Anyway, I'm going to stick with what I was trying to say a minute ago. The ISS is supposed to get deorbited by 2030. I definitely think it's likely to happen. That date is probably going to get locked in as well. there's a small, loud minority that would like to push for the station to become a museum or some sort of monument to our success. I definitely am in that camp, but I don't think they have any chance of winning. They're up against the current administration, NASA, and SpaceX is looking to get an $850 million check to figure out how to deorbit it. So I don't think there's any path where they can reasonably not orbit it. I keep a copy of Machiavelli on my desk here, and when you're up against that many forces, you're probably just going to lose. So I think that there's some cool stuff though that's happening as long as continual access to orbit, which the new acting administrator Duffy said was one of his two pillars, was nukes on the moon and continual access to LEOs. So I'm kind of hopeful. This is a cool article. It talks about the folks we mostly have already talked about: Orbital Reef at Blue, Axiom, Vast, Max Space. I'm forgetting two all of a sudden: Gravitics and somebody else. I forget who the other one was. But anyway, I'm kind of excited about that. I think that's our next future. I'm just gonna go on to the Viper release, Sean.
Yeah, the news link won't go to the page when I click on it. So
yeah, no worries. Yep.
All right, and
so I think the kind of big news this week is NASA has finally decided that they're going to go ahead and launch the Viper rover. I think that's a pretty important asset. It was mothballed for a while. People were pretty angry about whether it was going to fly or not fly. So kind of happy that that's actually going to have a second chance. Nobody wants to see assets like that just sitting in cold storage. I think it's very good that Blue Origin is the group that's selected for that. And actually land on the moon, so that's still an open question. And I kind of thought they wouldn't risk it for a company that hasn't proven it can land on the moon. So little bit surprised by that. Any comments on that, Sean?
Actually, I'm glad that they're going to do it. To me, I don't like wasting a resource that's already paid for. That's my gut instinct without looking really deep into this particular issue. I am a passionate fan of the space industry, but I don't cover the whole. I really focus on outside commercial economic endeavors. So, like NASA, okay. I look at their impact and helping expand that. But if we already invested the money in it, I think we should use it to its full ability.
Yeah.
Get as much of the taxpayers' money out of it as you can.
All right, let's move on to. We got just two articles left. Let's move into it quickly. I do pay attention to our local Seattle ecosystem. It's one of the most vibrant in the whole country, maybe in the world. We're doing a lot of really cool things. We covered these folks a little bit about a month or so ago. Don't have a lot of information about it other than they've raised $70 million and they're trying to build a Bluetooth network from the sky. Now, I absolutely do not understand that technology. It doesn't make any sense at all to me, but somehow, somewhere along the line, they convinced them that this is a real thing. So fingers crossed to those folks. And then the last piece is somewhat controversial. We're not going to get into the politics of it. We don't do politics on this show. But the NASA has been declared one of the core intelligence gathering organization of the country by an executive order, and that is pretty weird. That's not how they've operated up till now. They really hard in the 60s and 70s to make sure that there was clear distance between them and the military industrial complex, between them and the CIA. They wanted to have it was important politically, it was important from a diplomatic perspective to keep that separation. And now they've officially been listed as a intelligence gathering organization. So I find that very peculiar, where many of the things that they've been doing so well of gathering Earth-related science has been turned into, quote unquote, has a primary function of intelligence, counterintelligence, investigative, or national security work. That's a direct quote from the executive order. So that's pretty interesting. I think that's got a lot of implications down the road, where their budget's been cut for climate science and Earth monitoring, but then, since they're really good at monitoring things, maybe they can apply that to the intel community. I'm a little concerned, a little skeptical of that, but that's the official word from on top. All right. Anything else?
No, I just was looking at the article. Now, it also said right in here that there's where was it? It said that the order also added NASA to the Federal Service Labor Management Relations statutes, excluding it from collective bargaining representation.
Right.
So you have a department that's been excluded. You can't really outright get rid of it, or you have a lot of people in Congress not happy because their constituents have lost a job. So you take that out. Now you can negotiate and whittle away at it over a period of time. A little bit here, a little bit there. Death by 1,000 cuts.
Yep.
So that's kind of what I am seeing here.
Yeah, it's going to be hard watching I think it's going to be a little tough watching NASA evolve the way they're being forced to. So we'll just keep an eye on that. All right. Let's bring on our guest, Mr. Marotta. Where are you, sir?
Hi.
Hey, Tom.
Hey guys.
How's things?
Good. Thanks for having me on.
Right on. All right. Bunch of things going on. I want to acknowledge some of the folks in the chat. Aiden, nice to see you back, buddy. Appreciate that. Bruce, always good. I do want to focus on that. The SEDS, the Students for Exploration and Development for Space. It's, I think, the oldest student-focused organization in the country. They are having their annual conference here in Seattle. It's sponsored by John Conifay and Actuate. If folks are students, Aiden, this might be your place, buddy. Come on out to Seattle. It's going to be a good time. It's also a crazy useful job fair. I can remember I was in I've done this like 4 times, and it was Gwen Shotwell. Gwen Shotwell was at Champaign-Urbana out in Illinois should have been about 2016 or so, maybe earlier than that, maybe 14. And she had a line outside the door. to come for people to give her their resumes. So yeah, it's definitely a cool environment for students. So yeah, big fan of that organization. All right. I don't understand this note, but Brian Zetlin is saying, "Hi Tom, greetings from the grandfather of sea launch." So that probably needs some explanation. All right, so we'll come into sea launch here in a minute. Tom, take it away. Let's first start a little bit with your origin story and your background. Who are you? Why are you here?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me on. My name is Tom Marotta. I'm the CEO and founder of the Spaceport Company. And I'm here because, like Sean, one of the first guys to take a shot on me and give me a job was Michael Lane. First job out of college. It was with the Liftport crew. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Still one of the best jobs I ever had. And okay, so you asked about my origin story. So this is going to be a little extended since I guess I have a little time here. Um, wow, there's a lot of. First of all, I'm so pleased to see everybody in the chat room and with the comments. This is great. You have a great audience here. This is outstanding.
Yeah.
So I was born and raised in New York City. Let's see, regular kid from New York. Went to school out in the Midwest. Got my undergraduate degree from Notre Dame in business management and Chinese. And so I started looking for jobs, and I learned about this Liftport, the space elevator company. I have always been interested in space. I went to school hoping to do aerospace engineering and got distracted by Chinese and business, and it was meant to be. And so when I was privileged enough to be offered a job to go move out to Seattle, I jumped at it, and I have a lot of really good memories working out in Bremerton. I remember the prototype lifter going up the side of the building. I remember the prototype balloons, trying to have the tethers going up out at the park.
Out at the park. What? Tell that story because no one else has ever heard that story.
You're gonna have to
don't like meander with it, but tell a little bit about.
We did a lot of experimentation, and that's that one of the things I learned at Liftport is just go out and do things. Just go out and obviously do some analysis, think about it, sketch it out, but don't overthink it too much, especially if the risk is relatively minimal. And so with a lot of the aspects of the space elevator, we're like, well, we have this tether and we had this prototype lifter and it went up and down like maybe 30 or 40 feet up the side of the building. We're like, well, how do we get it up higher? And Michael said, all right, well, we're going to get some, I think there were weather balloons, right? Or like large, very large balloons.
Yep.
They must have been weather balloons. And we said, all right, we're going to.
They were party balloons. I still have some of them. Yeah.
All right. They were really big party balloons. That was a hell of a party.
Some of them were. Yeah. Yeah.
And so we said, all right, we're going to go to some park.
Yeah.
Like, was it near Tacoma or it was close to Bremerton? It wasn't in Seattle.
Close to Bremerton. Yeah. Yeah. It was Lions Park. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we said, all right, we're going to see how long these things will stay up. We're going to put them out there all night. So we ended up putting like, in my mind, I remember it being like 20, like a lot of balloons. Like it was a lot. It was at least a dozen balloons, and with the tether, and it was going up probably 100 feet, maybe. It was pretty high, and we didn't get any permits. We didn't get any we just went out there, and so we stayed out there all night. And by the next morning, they had all like the condensation had formed on the balloons, and they had all sort of kind of settled down a little bit, and we really learned something that day. So it was a very interesting time, and it was where I learned that, like I said, you can just go out and try things and learn things, and kind of the spirit of the early pioneers of aviation and aerospace, where they didn't have advanced simulation, they didn't have computational fluid dynamics, they just had to go out and build things and break them. And of course, the downside of that is when you get into high power rocketry, or even lower power rocketry,
Right.
the risk is quite serious. But for things like tethers and what the Liftport company was doing, the space elevator company was doing, was pretty low risk and pretty fun. So um, after Liftport, you know, I was out on the West Coast. It was time to go back home to New York, and so I went back to New York. Kind of, it's kind of a bittersweet move, but everything happens for a reason. Um, I went into commercial real estate. I became a commercial real estate agent in New York for a couple of years, and in the course of doing that, I was asking questions like, have you thought about traffic? Have you thought about the infrastructure? How are you going to manage, the growth and the development if you build this, strip mall or this housing development, or, you know, uh, and my bosses at the real estate agency said, "Man, you're asking the wrong questions. Stop rocking the boat. Just close the deal." And so I said, "You know what? I think I'm going to go to school and get a degree in urban planning."
Right.
And so I decided to go to the City University of New York. I got a master's of urban planning, became an urban planner. While I was in graduate school, I did a lot of interesting things. I was a wine distributor, had a lot of weird jobs while I was in grad school, and that was a lot of fun in New York. Uh, Met my wife, or met a girl who later became my wife, so that was really good. And became the assistant city planner of Peekskill, New York, in the Hudson Valley of New York. If you've ever been to the Hudson Valley, it's a really underrated part of the world. Very, very beautiful area. A lot of potential there. Really, really great job. Did that for about 2 years, and then at the time, the Iraq War, the war on terror was still a big thing. They were hiring a lot of city planners to do reconstruction in Iraq and Afghanistan. This was, you might recall, the diplomatic surge. Obama had come in, Hillary Clinton was the Secretary of State, and they were really trying to boost up our foreign affairs efforts. And so, a family friend, I was going to apply to be a contractor and go out and reconstruct Iraq. And they said, well, why don't you take the Foreign Service exam, try to make a career out of it? So, took the Foreign Service exam, passed, got in, and so became a Foreign Service officer. And that's how I started my federal career. Served our country overseas. In my first tour of duty was in Africa, in West Africa, and Cape Verde, and then I did a year in Iraq. Never did the reconstruction work, but did a lot of other interesting work. And then for 2 years, I was based in D.C., but traveled 2/3 of my time all over Europe. So been to the Azores, I've been to Vladivostok, and lots of places in between. So really, really cool job. Really tough on the family, or at least tough on my family.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so by the end of that 6-year time, I was married, had 2 kids, and we're just like, you know what? We just want to live on a cul-de-sac and shop at Costco and live a normal life. So um, was really, really privileged to get a job at the Office of Commercial Space Transportation. I transitioned my federal service from the State Department over to the Transportation Department. A lot of people don't know this. The Federal Aviation Administration has a small office dedicated to regulating the public safety around rocket launches.
Yep.
So there's big FAA with 40,000 people. They do air traffic control, and very, very obvious. Everybody knows that. There's a teeny tiny office with, I think they have maybe 130 people now, maybe 120. When I started, it was 80, and they've been boosting it up slowly, 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 and they need it, man. They could be twice as big because there are a lot of existing and emerging launch companies and now reentry companies.
Reentry. Yep.
Um, yeah, and so those not only the stuff going up, but the stuff coming back um, needs the law requires federal authorization for those activities, and so It was a great job. For 5 years, I got to see the industry grow. My favorite memory from that 5 years was watching the Falcon Heavy, the first, the twin landings, the twin boosters, and the federal regulators are a pretty grumpy bunch, and they generally try not to, very professional bunch. Um, but we all watched that in the conference room with popcorn,
Right.
and it was like we landed on the moon. Like everybody was like fired up, and I just have to share, like the folks at the FAA, they've got a tough job, they've got a big job to do, but they're fans, man. They love it. Maybe I'm saying too much, but they really love the industry and love rocket launches and love it and want to see it happen and want to encourage, facilitate, and promote it, as the statute says. So that was a really fun day. Um, but after 5 years, it was time to move on. I got a job offer from Astra. So I commuted from DC to San Francisco Bay every couple of weeks. And for almost a year, I worked at Astra, and my job there was first and foremost to get the first Part 450 license so the Astra rockets could start flying from Florida.
Mhm.
So we did that. And then my second job was to try to go find enough, be part of a team to try and find enough launch pads to launch a rocket theoretically every day. And it
Awesome.
was in the course of that second job where I said, damn, it's really hard to find cost effective, reliable, predictable launch pad access. If you want to start an airline, you can probably, you're not worried about finding like runways and even gates. I mean, gates are tough, but like they're pretty ubiquitous. It's pretty easy to find an airport to take off and land from with an airplane. It is not the case if you start a rocket company. And rocket science is hard enough. Building a rocket engine, all that goes into that, it's hard enough. It's not uncommon that a launch company will, after they've done all the technical stuff around the launch vehicle, will say, okay, they'll start thinking about the launch pad and the regulations around that and kind of the operations of
Right.
rocketry.
They're so focused on the technology. They're not thinking
Yeah,
about
which
the
is
logistics.
perfectly appropriate. That's
Right.
where you got to start. But oftentimes the operations are neglected, and or just they just don't rise to the higher priority. Yeah, and sometimes that can cause a lot of anxiety and angst. And so after I left Astra, started the Spaceport Company in February of 2022. And the goal of the Spaceport Company is what we do is we launch rockets at sea. And the
Yep.
goal is more launches in more places for less money. We're trying to make uh, more infrastructure, more capacity, more
More,
launch
wait,
pads
wait, wait. Let's say that again. More launches for
in more
more
places
for less
for
money.
less money.
That's a pretty strong pillar to build a platform on.
Learn from the best. So
Thanks. I wish I had learned some of those lessons myself, but
well, the jury is still very much out on the Spaceport Company. We're doing okay. We take it month by month and year by year. 2024 was a very good year. 2025 will be okay. Um, um, we're doing something that's very hard and very unusual, and we don't nearly have the resources that other entities have, like Boeing had, or like
yeah,
the Chinese currently have. So, but I understand that's my bio. I'll pause there. I understand there might be a
yeah.
question.
So one of our listeners has made this comment. Brian, hi Tom, greetings from the grandfather of sea launch. So how does sea launch and how does sea launch, what's the heritage from sea launch to the spaceport company?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm very much a believer of the keep it simple, stupid principle, the KISS principle, and you know I don't like to be the first person to do things. It's really, really hard to be the first person to say try to build a space elevator, right? Like it's really hard to do, or the first person to do anything is that's not how I'm built. So sea launch or launching rockets from sea is great because there's a precedent for that, right? Even before the Boeing Sea Launch project, which launched very large boosters like Falcon 9 class boosters from very large structures. I think it was a 400 by 400 foot wide mobile floating platform. It used to be an oil rig. It had a whole cruise ship sized support vessel. I mean, this was a massive project. Even before that, the Navy had been launching missiles from submarines underwater
Yeah.
since 1960, right?
Yeah.
And so the idea of using the ocean as a launch pad is not unprecedented, was not unprecedented. And so when I said, look, we are the Spaceport Company, we want more launches in more places for less money. Let's go out to sea, right? Like we let me be clear, the Spaceport Company is not the offshore spaceport company. If it was easy to build more launch pads on land like we build airports on land, we would be building launch pads on land. The fact is that it is almost impossible, especially in the United States, but even in a place like China, to build more launch pads on land. The primary reason for that is rockets are really, really loud. They're
Right.
really loud, right? Even when they're safe, like a
Right.
Falcon 9 is relatively safe, it's
Yeah.
relatively reliable. It's not nearly as reliable as an airplane, but we haven't had a Falcon 9 failure in a very long time, years and years and years. Going on 10 years almost. I think 2016 was the last failure. We'd have to check on that. Launchpad failure. Um, they're still really loud, right? And so we will probably never see the day of rockets launching and landing at airports, at least not very large rockets, because over time people will just be like, it's just too much. It's too loud.
It,
Blast overpressure, the rattling windows. I know people who live in Florida. There's a Falcon 9 flying almost every other day.
right.
They're really starting to get annoyed when the baby gets woken up in the middle of the night by the rocket, right?
There's
And this is the Space Coast, where everybody
it,
works in space.
that's where you are, right?
Yeah.
Out here in Seattle, just north of Seattle, because this is the home of Boeing, and where they built and launched the 777. There was uh, there was some hope locally that you could build a horizontal spaceport right here in Seattle, because the Payne Field is already listed as an experimental field. That
Yeah.
that hope is gone. Nobody talks about that anymore,
Yeah.
because most people are not launching horizontally, so we don't need that. Yeah.
I think the horizontal thing has yet to be successful. Operating an aircraft is really expensive, and you'd have to have a cadence of launches from that carrier aircraft that's much higher than what the industry can sustain right now. So I think horizontal launch will have its day for the reasons you mentioned. I mean, using a conventional aircraft and then flying out to the ocean and dropping a rocket and going, or I think that's a really compelling technical solution. It just has proven now twice with Virgin, not Virgin Galactic, Virgin Orbit, and earlier with the Pegasus. It's just so expensive to maintain that carrier aircraft, and there's just not enough demand for those rocket launches to justify the maintenance on the airplane. Not to mention the fact that you have pilots, in the case of Virgin Orbit, next to a liquid fueled rocket, right? And so now the rocket has to drop, and there was a lot of technical challenges and safety risks around that. So I still think the day will come. But
Well,
so we scoured the globe for land, and we quickly said, look, if we're going to have a network of spaceports, more spaceports, let's go out to sea. It's been done before. We can do it again. We think we can do it better. Challenge we're seeing now today, like when we started the company, there were lots and lots of small orbital rocket companies. You know, Astra had just raised $500 million. It was the SPAC craze. There were lots of entrants.
yeah, there were
That has
more
sort
than
of
100
Yeah.
150 launch companies that we were tracking. Yeah.
And I mean, and SLD-45, Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, um, they were very concerned about like how are we going to accommodate all of these launch providers, and I think they still are very concerned about it. But the number of rocket companies going to Cape Canaveral and saying, "Hi, we'd like to launch," that has sort of moderated in recent years, and so the underlying basis of our business plan, selling launch pads to small launch providers, um, has we've diversified away from that, or added more product lines to what we do, and almost 99% of our business now is DoD.
It's
We've
really
done 5 rocket launches to date. They've all been DoD funded or DoD supported. We're about to do our first purely commercial launch very soon. I won't tell you when, but very soon. It will
there's a
be a very modest, very modest operation, but I'm pleased to say it will be 100% commercial.
awesome.
In next year, we're planning to take a DoD payload for the Air Force Research Lab to space. It'll be America's first sea launch to space since 2014, since the Boeing Sea Launch Project. It's a suborbital mission. It's
Okay.
an atmospheric research sounding rocket, but it will go above 100 kilometers. So I see there's a lot of questions. So
Yeah, let's get into that a little
please.
bit. Aiden had 2 questions. One is about your second language. Is it useful as an engineer? I know it was useful as a State Department in person. He asked that question before you talked about the State Department. But what language would you suggest an engineer have? Um,
Um,
he's a student in, I think, Florida. I met him in Florida. I don't know if he's a student in Florida. No, he's
yeah.
a student in the
Um,
Midwest. I know where he is. Okay.
So I'm gonna answer this question as the CEO that has a couple of job openings right now, and
Good.
if somebody came to me and they're applying for one of the job openings we have right now, by the way, spaceportcompany.com careers page, check it out. We have 2 openings. Um, we don't have any language requirements, right? We don't we need you need to speak English fluently. You need to have a
And
absolutely
and
fluent.
American citizenship, right? Because some of that stuff is outside
Yeah. You got to be at least a permanent resident, or ideally a hold the blue passport, the U.S. citizenship. Um, yeah. So a lot of what we do is export controlled. So like we don't have an international office, right? We don't have people going to Japan or Germany or whatever. That's a big challenge in our industry, is just getting permission to market our products overseas. We have to go to the State Department and get permission even to market them. We're a small company. We're still a startup. So, and furthermore, we have more than enough demand for what we're doing just here in the U.S. So I would not recommend an aerospace engineer or somebody looking to get into the aerospace industry prioritize a second language. Now, if you naturally have a second language, if you were raised and English is a second language or whatever, or you just naturally are bilingual, that's awesome. That's great. But no, I wouldn't prioritize that
I might
for entry
piggyback
into
on
the
the back
aerospace
of
industry.
that.
Now that said, I loved learning a second language.
Yeah.
I learned Chinese, and then when I got to the State Department, my full time job for 6 months was learning Portuguese. I still dream in Portuguese. It was awesome, really fun, really
I
fun.
do want to piggyback on that about the second language. Aiden, if you're an engineer, and depends on what type of engineer you are, whatever, who is the most that does the most contribution to your field, you might want to think about studying their language, because there is always something lost in translation. And if
Yeah.
you learn a second language, it can help you fill in some gaps of whatever type of engineering
You
you're
know,
trying to do.
I'm gonna take it. Yeah, that's great, Sean. I agree with that. And I'm gonna. I mean, if you're dead set on learning a second language to get a second major in school or something like that, I'm gonna be a little cute and be a little, funny, half joking, and say study Latin because we need good writers,
Oh
right?
my God, we need good writer.
Learn
Jesus.
learn how to be a good writer.
Yeah.
And I'm half kidding with the Latin,
No.
but if it helps you to become a better writer, there are lots of really good engineers who are good at engineering and math and science and there's lots of good writers. It's very rare to get an engineer who's a very good writer, and that would be an interesting way to maybe differentiate yourself.
I'm going to go a little contrarian here. I don't care what other language you speak, but Aiden, I know you're a coder. Become a musician.
Yeah.
Become a musician. The very Tom may remember this. It was before Sean was around. I only hire coders that are musicians because of my internet company days. We had a band. We had a band on the roof on 4th of July. We threw a party on 4th of July. All of my coders, the good ones, the really, really exceptional coders, all were musicians. So I, rather than pick up a language, I would pick up an instrument. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It's,
All
I
right.
think whatever you do, it's good. It's good to have, multiple interests, right? Like yeah. So, you see what I'm saying?
Let me go back to kind of where you're at in the world. You said that 2023 was a good year. 2024 is going to be good. 2025 is going to be good. Most of your money is all of your money is coming from DoD. Are you willing to kind of talk about some of the contracts that you have, the reasons you're doing those contracts? Are you willing to talk about the amounts? How big is the company now?
Yeah. Let's talk about the business stuff a little. So that's great. So we're a pretty small company. We punch above our weight. So Spaceport Company, it's a Delaware C corp. So it's a for-profit corporation. We're not a charity or anything, or 501c3.
Yep.
It's a C corp. So we raised a little bit of angel capital to get started. Well, I mean, less than $1 million of angel capital to get started, um, and that was absolutely critical. And I'll just pause there and say, you never know when you might be talking to a high net worth individual. Okay, so the person who invested in our company, guy drove an Accord, lived in a very small 1-bedroom apartment, turned out to be an extremely wealthy person. And when that person said, "All right, I think you should go start a spaceport company, and I'm going to be an investor," I'm like, "You can't afford that. Like, you're gonna, you know." And then they revealed that they handled it, and apparently, especially in a place like the Bay Area or Seattle, I think that's fairly common with the tech industry. Where I come from, that is not common at all.
A little bit of the opposite.
If you get a friend invite on LinkedIn from somebody who's kind of weird, maybe just, just be nice, accept the invite. You never know.
You never know.
So that's one thing. So we did a safe note for that angel investor, and that's the only equity we've sold so far. Everything else has been organic
Wow,
R&D
great.
contracts. Yeah, so we've closed about $7 million so far in R&D contracts across a number of DoD entities. Um, why does the DoD care
Right.
about sea launch? We have two major range and test facilities. It's Cape Canaveral and Vandenberg. They are outstanding, exquisite, world-class facilities. There's a Category 5 hurricane in Florida, and Cape Canaveral is down for 6 months. That would be a major impact to national security as well as economic security.
Right. Yeah.
If there's a wildfire or an earthquake in Vandenberg, same thing.
Yeah. California.
So there are pockets of the Department of Defense that recognize this. Not everybody recognizes it, although Space Force is coming around. But the Defense Innovation Unit was a very early adopter and said, "Yeah, we need to be able to have mobile spaceports that operate on the water." And they were an early champion of the Spaceport Company. And so we went and did a launch. We did 4 launches from a lift boat in the Gulf of Mexico. They're tiny rockets, solids. They're about the size of a Sidewinder missile. If anybody is a Sean, you're an aviator, you might remember the Sidewinders. So that was a great test, but it was basically just a stunt. But it was a regulatory and operational pathfinder. That's the second time so far I've said operational. A very big competitive advantage of the Spaceport Company is that we think holistically. We're not just about the technology, but we're about scaling the entire operation. How do we take what we're doing and copy and paste it around the world? How do we build not just one launch or one spaceport, but a network of spaceports around the world? We want to be the McDonald's of spaceports and be able to just copy and paste it everywhere.
Which we have 5 minutes to go. So
Yeah.
I
Oh my
know,
gosh, the hour's up already. I'm just getting started.
I know, just getting started. So with that, kind of think about what does the next 5 years look like, and what does the next 25 years look like? How do you become the McDonald's of spaceports?
Yeah. Yeah. So we got a problem in the industry, and the problem is we have we have SpaceX. Like SpaceX is a great problem to have.
Right? Yeah.
I used to wish for a couple of billionaires to take us to space, and we've got it. So so over the next 5 years, we need some competition, right? We need companies to give Elon Musk what he has asked for and give him competition, give him a run for his money. With the industry consolidated currently under SpaceX, there's really very little need to have that McDonald's of spaceports, to have more than what SpaceX is going to be building. Starship is going to have everything it needs to build and replenish the Starlink system from the 4 or 5 pads they're going to have between Florida and Texas.
Yep.
Thousands of starships going to Mars. I hope it happens. I'm a little skeptical. If they do have the resources to go build thousands of starships, then we can start talking about spaceports at sea and spaceports in other parts of the world. So over the next 5 years, what I would like to see is a more competition, more entrants. Be it, I would love them to be American, but if they're foreign, that'd be great as well. Over 25 years, I think the future is very unclear. If this was 4 or 5 years ago, I would have said, "Oh, we're going to have, we're going to replace the ISS with maybe a handful, 4 or 5, commercial stations, and those are going to be your kind of like oil rigs in space. You're going to have crews going up for 2 weeks, doing stuff, maybe manufacturing pharmaceuticals or microchips, or doing science, or maybe a little bit of tourism." And I would like to see those oil rigs proliferate, where there's 10 or 20 or 30 of them. And then 20 years from now, or 10 or 15 years, you have one kind of core company town in orbit. A large, yeah, a large space station that rotates to provide artificial gravity, where the people working in the oil rigs commute from the company town in space out to the free flyers that are doing God knows what, manufacturing, movie studios, defense, tourism, whatever.
That's going to be us at L1.
I would like to see. That would be really neat. So.
Yeah, nice.
Let me take this one. How now? If there's like a wild card, like I know the projection right now is like 1.8, and I'll make it quick. Say for the industry to grow, say if it jumped up beyond that to like 2.5 trillion dollars, are you guys prepared to expand rapidly, or you do have to have something in place?
So yes, we are prepared to expand rapidly. We've identified all the assets we need. Our bottleneck is generally, well, I mean, it's always capital, but if there's demand, then the capital problem solves itself. So the bottleneck is probably most in terms of it's regulatory and it's logistical. So yeah, no, I mean, if there's all of a sudden a lot of launches that need to go like from the equator, for example, or into really weird inclinations that aren't efficiently met by existing land-based spaceports, yeah, we can move out pretty quick.
Nice. Good. We'd love to see you grow. I like the idea of lots of ports all over the world. You coined the phrase that I still use, which is the subway to space, mass transit to space. I still use
Yeah,
that.
that's what we need. That's what
Yeah.
we need. We need scheduled, predictable, cost-effective passenger transport to and from orbit. We need a subway to space. That's exactly right.
Yeah. All right, Tom, stick around. We're going to talk afterwards. We're going to close out the night. Really appreciate you being here. Thanks a lot, Sean. Our host Tom is on his way to Australia, so we'll be doing a live show from Australia on Thursday. So super excited about that. And with that, I'm gonna close out the show. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.